So this is red wine making part 2. The grapes have gone into the tank and they are now ready for fermentation, and the grapes have to be managed once they get into tank. You don't just, for the most part, leave them to sit there unless you're doing some sort of carbonic maceration, but we are not. So the cap or the grapes that are on the top of the tank have to be managed. And that is managed in 2 ways. One of those is with a punch down and the other is with a pump over. So I'll show you both of those techniques right now. Don't break your head.
Definitely do not break your head.
So, do you want to talk about what you're doing?
So this is some Gamay from Portico Hills, and it is now down to about 0 bricks. So it's almost dry, and this is usually when we start punching down the tanks instead of pumping them over. So just resubmerging the cap, which is all the grapes that have floated to the top, and rehydrating them and mixing them back in, and then they'll float back up again. All right, so we've got our tank here. We've got our little air pump, our bladder pump, which will help circulate the juice. And then we've got our bullet in there, which is a screen tube, which will help us just pull wine out and take it from the tank and cycle it back over. So let's watch how that happens. All right, here comes the first little bit of juice going through. And then coming back at you. Whoop. So some people think this is more extractive than punching down. Some people think it's less. Depends on who you talk to. We tend to find that it's a little less extractive because you're not beating up the grapes as much. But it also depends on how long you do it for. So we usually just do 5 to 10 minutes once a day and just kind of rehydrate the grapes here.
Peter yesterday in his video on taking the pump over was doing the pump over without a valve, weren't you?
Oh yeah.
Is that a good idea?
Never a good idea.
No, it's not a good idea. You don't do a pump over without a valve. And so after he turned the video off, it ended up all over the floor. How much wine do you think you spilled? How many bottles of wine did you rob from our?
Just over a bottle.
Just over a bottle. Okay, it's not too bad, honey. Not too bad. So there are a few reasons that you want to punch down or pump over your tank for red wine. One of those is during fermentation, you want to introduce oxygen to the yeast so that we can have a nice healthy fermentation. You also want to plunge the cap into the juice to keep what we call volatile acidity from forming, and this forms like nail polish aromas and can just make the ferments really stinky. We also want to extract color, tannin, and flavor from red grapes. Almost without exception, all grapes in the world have a white or clear pulp, and all the compounds responsible for color and tannin in red grapes are in the skin. And so you have to put the skin in contact with the juice in order to get some sort of color and also for it to have some sort of tannin extraction. Anything else, Pete?
That's it.
I nailed it?
Nailed it.
Nailed it! So we also clean the tank after punching down, because you'll see that the grapes have, they're going to rise back up, but you want to sort of clean around the edges to make sure that we don't just have grapes that are left, exposed, that can bring us some microbial contamination, or that just get dried and get hard to remove later. How's that coming along, Matthew?
It is coming along stellarly.
Are you spraying with a little sulfur water or just?
I believe this is SO2.
Yeah, okay.